More people come in. And I run the public access programs for the state legislature. I have the best job at the Capitol. I don't have the best pay at the Capitol. I have the best job. And so my job is to help people understand how the legislative process works and how citizens can be more effectively involved in it. And so it's a non-partisan, non-issue specific job. So my job is all process and no policy. So the policy work is yours and the process work is yours. So
I'm just curious, is it a civil service position, or are you appointed by the legislature?
No, we serve at will. Most of the people at the Capitol serve at will, and we can be fired with no notice.
So you're appointed by someone?
I was just hired by the head. I work for the Legislative Reference Bureau, a nonpartisan service agency at the Capitol, and so we serve at the pleasure of our bosses. So, you know, I could go in tomorrow if my boss didn't like me anymore, she could just say bye, no reason. Yeah. And so we work hard to protect other people's employment rights. But I really do have a wonderful job, and I can't wait to retire. Thank you. Tell you what, I'm going to put you in charge if more people come in.
Oh, sure, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe if I lose them.
So we call this presentation really powerful because it really matters to me that people understand that the central power of a democracy lies in its citizens, and the activism of the citizens is what moves our democracy forward. And so I am incredibly blessed that I lived in Williamsburg, Virginia for 18, 20 years, you know, my young days there, and you know, it's a completely restored colonial capital. And we knew Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry and Sam Adams much better than we knew our next door neighbors. And so while I was busy thinking I wasn't political at all, I was kind of absorbing the foundations of our government. And so, the people that were there last night, I mentioned that our system and the theory of our government is stunningly beautiful. The practice falls short. And so it's our job as citizens to help the legislators bring the level of the practice of our government closer to the level of theory. And so, and government does a lot of stuff that's wrong. They do a lot of stuff that's right too. And so, you're the power of people in our system. Sorry. And the legislature cannot do it without. So, looks like somebody else is in here too. So in the whole of the United States, there is only one resource of its kind that's devoted simply to serving the citizens at a state legislature, and that's in Hawaii. So my office is 23 years old and still the only one in the nation. And we exist purely to serve you.
There's going to be a charge for that because it's mine. No, I'm kidding.
I have more. I happen to have more. So when you, here it is here. So when you look through this is going to give you an idea of the services and the resources that we offer. A lot of the things is more readily available to people on Oahu because that's where the capital is and where my office is. But I was a neighbor island activist for a long time before the Hurricane Iniki decided to move me to Oahu. And so I really understand what neighbor island people need out of their government. And people on Oahu really kind of think that they get what it's like to try to do things from a neighbor island, and they don't. And so when I ascended to the heady heights of my office, I determined that we were going to serve the people on the neighbor islands more fully. And so my assistant and I fan out across the state every year in November and December, and we go into communities all around the state, about 20, depending on the year, 20, 25 neighbor island locations where we go and teach people how they can use their power more effectively. On the back of this nice man's trifold back here, you will see that there's a phone number, 974-4000. That's the number from the Big Island that you can use to access the state government for free. And I often will say this is a free service you pay dearly for through your state taxes. So make good use of it. So there are all of our phone numbers in government, 7-digit numbers. So dial the 974-4000, and then the last 5 digits of any of our phone numbers will get you into the state, into the numbers that you need. So
where is this specifically? Where is the office located? First floor?
our office, room 401 at the Capitol.
So is it actually, does that mean it's on the,
4th floor, yeah.
the governor's office is up there too?
He's the 5th floor. Yeah, and that way we can keep an eye on him from down there. So all of the United States, only Hawaii, has this resource where we get to serve you as the citizens of the state. Room 401 at the Capitol, and you were asking about the Capitol, and just as an aside, I'll mention that our building was built in 1969, and have you been to the state Capitol? Yeah, it's a beautiful building, yeah? We're not talking about the ponds come around it, but it's a beautiful building, and the way it was built, that courtyard in the middle, was designed specifically so that the voice of the people could be heard. And if you've ever been to the Capitol when there's a big rally going on, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people are really upset about whatever it is they're upset about, the voice of the people rises in the Senate and the House and the other level of the House and the governor's office, and that's by design. So make sure your voice. Okay, so this, I won't spend a lot of time on the early parts of this because we have to be kind of time conscious. I'm guessing all of you know we have 3 branches of government. So, and this material is in the little handout. Did everybody get packet? Okay, I'm going to put somebody to work again then. Flyers. Somebody can fold those. And here are the only real handout I have to go with our flyer is this. And this gives the phone, fax, and email addresses of the legislators. And more handouts will be available later on. But right now the House is involved in a real struggle over who the speaker is going to be. So we don't have a calendar because we don't have a speaker and we don't have any House committees. And so life is Jane. Keeps us toned. So if you come to our office, and please do come to your office, you can come in just simply to sit and read the funny paper if you want. If you're going to hearings and stuff, it can get really intense and really hard. And so come in and just chill if you want to. But we have 5 public computers. We're completely ADA compliant. They're wheelchair access. We have software that will read websites to blind people or visually impaired, a TTY telephone. And so, and then we run the Legislative Broadcast Project. And now Leo takes all of our broadcasts. We do about 350 hours a year of hearings and briefings and floor sessions so that people across the state can have more involvement in their government.
That's good.
There are 4 of us that work in our office.
I'm sorry, my wife and I will be on the palace grounds this Friday. So we would just take an elevator up to the front
Come on
floor?
up, yes. It's a very open building, and the security people go crazy with that. But you don't have to show ID, it's your building. You come in and you go where you need to go.
So there are newspapers in there too, if we just wanted to take a break?
You can go and make sure, when you go in on Friday, tell Virginia that I said hello. So Virginia Beck is my full-time year-round assistant, and I'm the queen bee of the office, and then we hire 2 people to work during the legislative session. I just love it when people show up. This is great. Okay, so 3 branches of government. We work in the legislative branch where the laws are made. Once the laws are made, they go to the bills are passed. They go to Uncle Neil for his consideration. Is he going to pass it? Or is he going to sign it into law, whatever? And sometimes there's a real disagreement, Think super ferry. And if that's the case, then the brawls between the other 2 branches of government are solved in the judicial branch, at usually the Supreme Court level. A 3-legged stool will always be in balance if the weight is distributed equally over those 3 legs. So it's a very complete system in that way. And we work at the state level. People do have questions sometimes about federal or local issues, and we do our best to help them. That's not what we do, but we've all been run around by government, so we do our best to try to be the next to the last phone call you have to make. So, yes.
Is there going to be any interaction in this session? Like, if you have a question, you can ask, or do we wait until the end, or what happens?
You ask when you need to ask. Just bear in mind, we got to be out by 7 o'clock, and I've got about 14 hours of things to tell you.
One question is that there were 4 ladies in your office. Are the men gradually being driven from jobs?
No. Last year, Larry Kamakaviva Ole, who has now retired 7 times, he retired to go take another job. Yeah, and so no, I love the men.
Good.
Just to keep that in mind. Yeah. Okay, so state government, state legislature, 51 members of the House and 25 members of the Senate. It's intentionally an odd number. It's not just that all the legislators are odd, it's that you want an odd number, hopefully to prevent ties and that sort of thing. What do the lawmakers do? Their job is to serve you and me, and they do this in a variety of ways. Everybody among us in the state has both a representative and a senator that serves the region where you live. I used to live in Hanalei, and Mina Morita for a long time was the representative for that area. And so if something came up that had to do with that area, she's the person I could call. So your representative and your senator, if something's going on in your district that they need to know about, pick up the phone and call them. Our legislators are, by many standards, much more accessible than people in other states and regions have. Legislators also serve topically. They sit on various committees. A legislator might sit on the Public Safety Committee and Hawaiian Affairs Committee and Finance Committee or whatever. And so they serve on a variety of committees. So if something, say back when I was living in Hanalei, if something environmental had come up that I wanted the legislature to know about, Nina was my twice way in because she served the region and she chaired the committee that dealt with environmental issues. And so if something comes up in your district, find out if your legislators sit on the committee that's relevant to, and if so, you got 2 ways in, not just 1. So, and your legislators are unusually available. Some of the brave among them also serve in leadership roles. It's hard work for them. The way they serve, 4 things only that they do. They enact laws, but they hear bills, hear the testimony on the bills, pass a very small percentage of those bills that they send on to the governor. Resolutions are passed at the Capitol too. They do not have the force and effect of law, but they can be very useful instruments to get certain things done without going to the expense and the time of creating laws. We're not going to deal with resolutions tonight. They're kind of a free-for-all. The titles can change, the contents can change, and so we're going to deal with just passing the laws. Legislators can propose amendments to our Constitution, but we would never, ever entrust changing our Constitution to mere legislators. That's our job. So the legislature can pass bills that would affect our Constitution if the citizens of the state decide in the voting process that they want those changes made. That's our job, though. So every year there are many, many bills introduced that would amend the Constitution in various ways. But all legislators understand that our foundation document needs to be solid, like the foundation of your house. And so not very many constitutional amendment bills passed. This last year 2 did, yes.
So does it require legislation to make changes to administrative rules?
No, that happens in the executive. It's an excellent question. After bills are passed, then the departments that would have that as their kuleana, that's where the administrative rules are written. And so they will be built on the law that the legislature passes.
So, how do you, if there was an administrative rule, how would we change, could we change it?
It would have to be done within the department, that it would, say it's a Department of Health, you pass a bill that was about health. In the Department of Health, they would write the rules that would accompany that piece of legislation, so that's where they would have to be changed. You would need to deal with the executive branch on that.
Yeah, right now I'm in a tiff with the Department of Health.
Congratulations.
County, I have no problem. I'm enclosing my garage, so engineering and planning, no problem. Standing there when I go to the health, there's a big issue about septic tank, and they're saying that I'm going to convert to a bedroom. I said no, I'm going to do a playroom. No, you're going to do a bedroom, and she wouldn't. That's it. So if I want to change that ruling, how do I do it?
You would need to talk to the people at the Department of Health.
I talked to the head.
Okay.
Do I have to go all the way up to Susan Kohler?
Maybe, but you've got the toll-free number to get into the main office for Department of Health. So yeah, I don't.
It's sort of stupid. You know, she's predicting my future.
World is full of stupid. It's our job to fix that. So the other thing that legislators do is approve the state budget. And a couple of years ago, you know, when we were really in tight times financially, more so than we are now even, I was doing this presentation out in Representative Nakashima's district. And, you know, I'm your basic wise ass. And so I said, you guys are going to approve the state budget, and this year it's going to be about $17. And out of the back of the room, Nakashima raises his hand and says, we don't have that much money. So things are better, but we're still in really tight times. And so we do our best to make good use of your taxpayer dollar. Legislature's website, and we'll go into this in greater detail later, but if you don't know who your legislator is, you can find out just with the database that exists within the legislature's website. So you go into there, put in your street name, and I'm slowly buying a little cottage up in Volcano on Ala Ohia Street, so I thought that would be just the right one to use. So if you just stick in Ala Ohia, and you can add the zip code if you want, but it comes up. And so two new legislators, Representative Onishi and Senator Ruderman, are the people who serve that district. And so those are your go-to folks, whatever your street name is. Each name on these sites will be hyperlinked to that person's individual page. So that if you were to click on Senator Ruderman's name, you would get phone, fax, email, room number, all of the information you need. Now, legislators decide what goes on their own page after, you know, this is standard. Soon we'll have the names of the committees on there, bills and resolutions that he will have introduced. You'll be able to scroll through those. And then this part, he determines what goes on there. So, if you are planning to meet with a legislator, maybe you don't know this person, it's a really good idea to find their page and just read through and see what interests them. Because you're not just there to spew to them. You're also there to, it's what I need, blah, 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 blah. How can I help you? Because it's very much a two-way street. So just bear in mind that you can find out a lot about a person by looking at their own page. You want to know who all of the legislators are? In the middle of the Ledge website, these 6 buttons are crucial, and so much of the work that you're going to do is going to be able to be done from these 6 buttons. And so one of them is legislators. So you just click on that, and then you'll find a listing of all of the people who serve at the Capitol. You can sort by Senate only, House only, or you can sort them all. You can sort by district. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this site. Now, some of the information I'm going to have in this presentation is from the 2012 session because certain things have not happened yet. So, in any event, all of the names will always be hyperlinked to get you to their own pages. If you want to know who sits on various committees, click on the committee button. Again, hyperlinked. If you were to click on the Ag Committee's hyperlink, that would take you to that committee's page. The chair, your own Cliff Tsuji, is currently Ag Chair. We don't know what's going to happen when the House decides who's going to be Speaker and all of that, but he's been Chair of that committee for quite some time. So the Chair and the Vice Chair will always be pictured, and then the names of the members of the committee are also listed there. And I circled this just so you know, even though we're not in session, there are a series of informational briefings that happen during the interim, and right now there is one scheduled. Always, again, hyperlinks, hyperlinks, hyperlinks. So this is an event that's taking place tomorrow at 9 a.m. So if you want to watch it.
So the committees meet year-round?
The legislature is technically a part-time legislature, but they serve year-round. And we frequently have interim briefings. Yes, you had a question.
So how do people get to be heads of committees?
They're appointed by the Speaker in the House and by the President in the Senate. So those are very powerful positions. And then the people who chair committees are very powerful within that committee too. It's a committee chair will determine if measures are going to be heard on their agendas. So you have many ways that you can communicate with the legislature, and you can call up the chair of a committee and say, this is a horrible bill, don't waste your time putting it on an agenda, or please make sure this gets on an agenda before the deadline. So.
I'm sorry, just quickly. Is it more effective to do snail mail as opposed to
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Short answer, yeah. We'll go into that in just a little bit. You know the answer to this already. The most important person in the entire governmental system, that's me and you. The individual citizen is why we have a government. We are the government. And we serve the government. We're it. Do your best to get together with bunches of people to further your agenda, because it's hard work. It'll burn you out. It'll leave you just shriveled up like a little dead piece of bacon if you try to do it all by yourself. If you are going to do it by yourself, find a way to show up and make sure they notice you. And if you can get into a hearing room wearing that dress, then good on you. They'll listen. They may call the cops on you. These are our jobs as citizens. We elect our legislators. We vote on those all-important constitutional amendments. The very brave among us run for office. If you're in office, I guarantee you, half of the people that you serve are going to be mad at you all the time. It's just the law, you know. So, and these are the things that we're going to communicate, offering testimony, and how to get together with other people to have a stronger voice. And that's what we're going to be talking about. If you ever get stuck, just give us a call. You know. Use that toll-free number. When does it happen? This is an accurate graph of the calendar year. The interim in between legislative sessions is certainly our favorite time of the year, but it's also a crucially important time because that's when your legislators are actually going to have time to talk to you. Within the calendar year, within the legislative timetable, about 4 months, it's technically 60 legislative days, but it takes about 4 months because there are recess days, and recess doesn't mean anything, but they're still holding committee meetings, but they're not in floor session. There's some Sundays and such in there, but each one of these represents a major deadline. Bills are dying all the time right through there, and so they're incredibly busy. Legislators might be working 12, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week during the session. So this is when you want to say, come meet with our people. Come and take a tour of this location that we're so concerned about. Come see my septic system. You know, that's the time to talk to them. So Third Wednesday in January is what the Constitution says is when we're going to start.
The previous one, the colors in the pie, not the green one, but those multiple one during session, those just colors, or do
Those
they
are
say
major deadlines, major deadlines. And so I'll just mention right now, and this first one represents bill introduction period. When the legislature convenes on January 16th, the clock is going to start, and we will probably have 7 calendar days until bill cutoff. We're going to, in that 7-day period, we're going to have over 3,000 pieces of legislation introduced. And every time I do a presentation, I say that the entire rest of the calendar is devoted to killing them off. What's left, in some form or another, is what goes to the governor for his consideration. So the pace is brutal. Between 6.5% and 8.5% of the bills pass. Yeah.
When do the lobbyists attack?
When do they
When
attack? When do they start their communication? Year-round. Year-round. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that's mentioned about the Congress is that truly there are so many bills that there is no way that every congressman and every senator will have the time to read them and so on.
That's true.
So I assume 3,000 in what I mean, if somebody summarizes them for them.
There are brief bill descriptions that will help. Legislators have staff that do a lot of the reading of those. A lot of the times the legislators have been deeply involved in the creation of those. And so no legislator can understand them all. It's just not possible. And so one of the things that really helps is to know what that legislator's focus is on. What committees does this person sit on? And the vast majority of bills will never get a hearing.
So aren't the devils in the details, as they say? So summaries we really not help very much to.
And they're all online, and everybody can read them. And so our job as citizens, too, as in the committee process, we are reading them going, that's crazy, or this is wonderful, and you're writing testimony and sending in, and that's the mutually beneficial relationship that the citizens and the lawmakers have, because they cannot, it's a great question, they cannot be authorities on all of the matters that they have to make decisions about, but you and I are the authorities in our lives, and we are the ones who tell them, this works, this does not.
That's if you don't have anything else to do.
We'll have that problem. You know, the fact that we have too much to do in our lives is a wonderful problem to have. So, 60-day calendar, we've already talked about the brutal pace. Opening day is a lot of fun. We have festivities and such. In our office, we have a great party called Cheap Crackers and Rich Conversation, so please come. It's potluck. You don't have to bring anything, but come. Many people will come to the Capitol just for the food on opening day, and there are some people that they just can't get the food. Good for them. That may be the only time in their lives they ever communicate with the people who make these all-important decisions about their lives. So if you don't want to do anything but come to the food, come to the food. We'll feed you. We'd love to see you. Our jobs as citizens is to help the lawmakers make the best decisions for the state of Hawaii. I love this slide. I grew up farming. I'm from the southern Appalachian Mountains. My people are coal miners. We are poor people. Wonderful place to grow up. We always grew our corn, beans, and squash together. And the reason you grow them together is you will increase the yield of all three of those crops if you do grow them together than if you grew them separately. Partly because it's less labor intensive. You don't have to put in a bean pole if you're going to use the corn stalk to do it. And the beans are going to keep the corn stable in the wind. And the squash has thorns. It's going to protect it. And the leaves are going to mulch the soil. Work together with the people with whom you disagree. Not just with the people that you agree with. Corn and corn and corn is still just corn. Corn, beans, and squash is a complete nutritional package. So, by all means, work with the people with whom you agree, but learn from the people with whom you do not. Because the minute that you find something in common with your opponents, who are not your enemies, or your opponents, you plant that seed in the common soil. This is something we all agree on. and you have the beginnings of something that can grow into an understanding that will benefit both your lives. End of the sermon. My grandpa was a preacher. We're going to track a piece of legislation through the process. It's going to be a silly piece of legislation because as a representative of a nonpartisan office, we have to be very careful not to appear to support or oppose something. So we're going to have a bill that's going to make all of the state's traffic problems go away because we're going to require everybody in the state to ride a bicycle. So you can do simple things. One of the many ways that you have options to communicate with your legislators is you can say, please introduce a bill on my behalf. You'll want to do that in the interim and not during the session because there's not going to be time. And I once did this. I wrote my representative and I said, you know, I live in Honolulu, and when people are crossing the Pali and they're going into the tunnels and people are changing lanes all the time, you have a traffic accident in the tunnel, then everything stops. So please introduce a bill that will prohibit people from changing lanes as they're approaching a tunnel or when they're in the tunnel. It seems logical to me. So you have those options. Please introduce a bill on your behalf. Pick up the phone or meet with them when they, when they come back to the community. Just sit down and talk to them every day. So you're going to do that. Then you can go to your own legislators. You can go to people who sit on the various committees, or you can search out people who have been involved in those issues in the past. So these are all options available to you. We've already covered this. January 16th is when the big show starts. And 1 week we've already talked about. It's very dismaying. 1 week to introduce them all. And then out of that, on the other end, will come about 250 laws or bills that will pass, and they'll go to the governor, and around 200 or so will become law. And bills can create things, they can take laws away that are there. Bills are introduced and passed that will repeal other laws, those sorts of things. When bills are introduced, they're just numbered in sequence when they hit the clerk's desk. House bills start with an H, HB. Senate bills, SB, Senate bill. And so these are the things that are going to happen to a piece, this piece of legislation we're going to have introduced that will help ease our traffic woes. It's going to be assigned to various committees. And in this case, it's going to be a House bill, but it could just as easily be a Senate. So a bill will have to go to various committees to be considered from different perspectives by the people who sit on those committees. In between the committee meetings, there is the consideration of the committee of the whole. All of the members of the House and all of the members of the Senate meet in floor sessions 60 times during the calendar year, during the legislative year. And part of the work that they do is to kind of check in with the committees and say, yeah, okay, we're happy enough with that bill, keep it going. Now, they don't individually discuss those bills because the session would last for years, but there might be an agenda that the speaker, in this case a House bill speaker, says, do any members of the House have anything to discuss about the bills who are listed on page 3? And so they might have those discussions. So those are all called readings. Bills have to have 3 readings in the House and 3 readings in the Senate so that all of the members of the legislature can keep their eye on what's happening. One version of a bill only can go to the governor for his signature, and then he has the chance to sign those bills into law to allow them to become law without his signature, still passes. Or he can veto them. And if he does veto, then the legislature has one more chance to undo that veto. So our bill is going to be called Relating to Transportation. That's its name. And that will remain its name. This is one of the ways that resolutions and bills differ, because resolutions can change the names as they move from committee to committee. It's just a free-for-all, but not for bills. The basic bill number is going to stay the same. House Bill 123 is going to be the bill we're talking about. The content of the bill always has to reflect the title. So relating to transportation, no matter what happens to this bill, it has to be about transportation. So, passes first reading. All bills pass first reading, yes.
So, we're just talking about it right now. Not all bills actually make it to the first reading, or?
Oh, no, all bills do.
Okay.
And my theory is that helps them have a positive self-image. I passed first reading and then they killed me. So, yeah. Think of it as the X on the bingo card. Yes?
What exactly is a meeting?
It's when the members of the House, all of the members of the House or all of the members of the Senate keep an eye on what's happening in the committees. And so bills have to go to the floor, the House chamber, the Senate chamber, 3 times before they can move on. So those are all of the people, not just the committee people. Happy New Year.
Are there votes on those?
Yes.
meetings,
Yes,
up or down?
they are. First reading is really pro forma. Bills pass first reading. Second reading, people don't pay a lot of attention to because they're busy. Third reading, that's the rubber meets the road kind of thing. Third reading is there's something imminent about to happen, and so that's when you have the really vigorous floor debates and that sort of thing. Because you pay your bills at the last minute. Yeah, you don't wait. You don't do it 2 weeks early.
Now, you mentioned for the introduction of the bill, it's the first week, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, somebody is going there, or many of them, all of them are perhaps going there on the 16th. How are they going to be introduced, all the bills that the session is going to,
They're introduced every day in the floor.
just in 1 week, they have a new member of the legislature.
And individual legislators can introduce bills for their constituents or whatever. There are some limits to how many they can introduce, but not a lot.
But I'm saying all of it has to be done in that first week.
Yes. Yes. So our bill is going to be given 3 committee referrals in the House. It's a House bill, so that's where it's going to start. Transportation, obviously a transportation issue. So that's going to be the first committee to hear this thing. If it passes Transportation Committee, and at every point along the way, bills are dying but it doesn't. So if it passes the Transportation Committee, then it will go to the Public Safety Committee, because there are obvious safety considerations here too. If it passes that, then it will go to Finance. So, hi there, do you want to sign in? There's a sign-in sheet somewhere, and some materials, please. When you are testifying in the committee process, and you can do it by email, you certainly don't have to come to the Capitol, but bear in mind whatever the committee's Juliana is. If you're in the Finance Committee hearing, you're not going to be saying, we really got to get our traffic problem solved. You're going to be talking about how are we going to fund this. So always when you're writing your testimony, be aware of what the responsibility of that committee is and focus on that in your testimony. Now, anytime a bill has monetary implications of any sort, $1, it still has to have Finance as its last House committee, and it has to have Ways and Means as its last Senate committee, because you've got to figure out how you're going to fund or how funds are going to be generated by whatever the action is. It passes unamended. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. So on it goes to the Public Safety Committee. Public Safety starts hearing from citizens. It's like, good idea, but you know, there's some things you're going to have to deal with here. And so they listen to your testimony and they change the bills. The first amendment to the bill. We have a new version of the bill now. House Bill 123, House Draft 1. This is going to be the current version of the bill. The original version of the bill is no longer under consideration. So the new bill says you got to use a bicycle, you got to wear a helmet. And then that's the one that goes to the floor. Anytime you see the weirdo with the red book, that's when you're having the readings on the floor. All of the members of the House in this case are going, yeah, okay, it's a good enough bill. So, as a second reading, it goes to Finance. Finance creates another version of the bill bill. The original 2, sit down, be paid. The House Draft 2, you've got to use a bicycle, wear a helmet, and pay $1 a year to the highway. That's the version that moves forward. After a bill goes through all of its committees, it has to cross to the other chamber for them to consider it as well. And crossover is a massive deadline. At that point, all House bills that are still alive go to the Senate, and all Senate bills that are still alive go to the House. Now, crossover takes place about 6 weeks into the session, and at that point, those 3,000 or so bills were down to around 700. 6 weeks in, so it's about 80% of them are already gone by then.
How many ways can a bill be introduced by and by whom?
Only by legislators.
Only.
Excellent question. Even the governor?
Okay.
The governor cannot introduce legislation because he is not a legislator.
Right.
So he has a whole package of bills that he gives to the Senate President and the House Speaker, and he says, please introduce these on my behalf.
So he has to do it indirectly.
Yes, yes, only legislators. Superb question. So this bill is going to pass third reading, and that means it's going to cross over to the Senate for them to consider it. So we changed the color of our screens now because we moved to the Senate. This is not a pretty screen right now because what's going to happen now is we're going to have Public Safety and Health Committee. This is going to be a joint meeting, and it's going to be the first committee in the Senate. PBS/HLT. If you see that on a hearing notice, that slash means committees meeting together. And sometimes they will do that to make sure that a bill gets heard by all of the people that need to hear it. So if slash means jointly, semicolons mean sequential. So if this passes these committees meeting jointly, then it will go to Transportation, Senate Transportation, and then it will go to Ways and Means. This is the one that's not pretty. This is called Gut and Replace, and it's about as beautiful as it sounds, and it happens several times in the course of the year. This committee group looks at the bill and goes, we don't like it. So we're not going to kill it though. We're going to take out all of the language, and we're going to stick in language instead that says bicycles are now forbidden. And that complies with the rules because it's still a transportation measure. So be aware that just because your bill is alive, it may not be doing what you want it to do. So,
They put it in coma.
huh?
They put it in coma.
Oh, yeah, just wait. We have some coma talk coming up. So, yeah, trust me on that. So this new version of the bill, House Bill 123, House Draft 2, Senate Draft 1, we're going to shorten it and say Senate Draft 1 version of this bill. This is the one that moves forward. So maybe the press gets hold of this and it's like, what have these people done? So the community gets up in arms. They send in all this testimony to the Senate Transportation Committee and they go, what did these people do? And they do a gut and replace. They go back to the earlier concept, but they tinker with it a little bit because they got to tinker because that's what humans do. So what they do is they go back to the earlier ideas, but now you got to be 18, you got to ride in the same direction of traffic, still got to wear a helmet, all that pieces. What has happened here? This bill has gone to 5 different committees now, and it's very different from the bill it started out as. It was a good idea, but it wasn't necessarily a good piece of legislation. This is where you and I come in. What has happened all along here? You and I being the authorities in our lives, we are the ones that are sending in the testimony saying, this sucks, or this is great, and this is how you need to change this. And so very much a symbiotic relationship between the legislators and the people who provide the input on the things that they're authoritative about. So this is what you have done. Yes?
If there's a hearing and there's a joint committee, do both chairs of each committee, does the chair of each committee have to reschedule it in order for it to be heard?
No, they hear it together at the same time.
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about for it to get on the agenda because the committee has to
Both,
put it onto the agenda.
yes.
So if it's a joint committee hearing, do both chairs have to agree to hear it?
Yes.
In order for it to be heard?
Yes.
And so if one of the committee chairs says, no, I don't want to hear it, then it doesn't.
It's one of the many, many ways a bill can die, yes. Yeah, so both chairs are very powerful. And one chair can, a lot of what goes on is communication between legislators too. So say you persuade this chair, you really need to put this on an agenda, but the other chair of the other committee may not want to. Can you talk to him? So it's not just you talking to the legislators, it's you persuading the legislators to talk to one another and do what you need them to do. Great question. So, goes down to the floor, the weirdo with the red book, and so it has been discussed on the floor, and on it goes. Now, the Ways and Means Committee does not hold a public hearing on this, and still they change the bill again. So what's going on? What's going on is the calendar. You got 4 months to make all of these decisions in. And so, because Ways and Means is a money committee, and all of the stuff in the House is kind of heading their way. House and Senate rules have been written differently about varieties of things, and one of them is when hearings have to be, when hearings have to be held. In the House, every committee that hears a measure has to say, please, would anyone like to come up and testify in person, orally, about this measure? In the Senate rules say a public hearing has to be held on the Senate side. And so that's just a measure that deals with the complexity of the calendar. So if you had a bill that had only one committee on the Senate side, one committee referral on the Senate side, then that committee would be obligated to say, please come up and testify orally. But just because this particular committee in this particular example doesn't hold that kind of public hearing, they will hold a decision-making hearing. And prior to that, by all means, send in your testimony, because they take the written testimony. It's just they don't have the time to hold the oral testimony. So they modified this again. And our new version, Senate Draft 3, is the one that goes down to the Senate floor. And we're going to be broadcasting third reading almost inevitably. And our office does run the broadcast project, and so third reading we broadcast. And you'll sometimes see these verbal brawls if you're looking at a floor session, because they're just really getting at one another. The Republicans are saying this, the Democrats are saying this, and it's like, geez, people. But what they're doing is they're using this bill as the opportunity to discuss their philosophies of governance. It's more than just what the bill is itself.
Yeah, I was going to wait to the end to ask this question, but since you brought up broadcast, I've tried to watch the state broadcast, and usually they're on at like 1:30 in the morning. And sometimes they're on, but they're going, you can't see it, it's just...
That would be something, are you talking through Naleo?
Yeah, on TV.
Yeah, because they're sent out in good shape, and so Naleo may have a problem with something like that. If you're looking at it at 1:30 in the morning, it's probably a rebroadcast, because we broadcast the live, and then there are 2 rebroadcasts.
And I haven't seen any during the day here, as far as I know.
Well, we have, that's the vast majority, 80-90%.
I just like to see more of it.
You can also watch them online. Yeah, they're on the computer, they're on the legislature's website, and so they're there. And I can talk to you more about that if we still have time. So we're going to, this bill is going to have to go back to the House. Wherever chamber a bill originates in, if it's still alive when it gets finished in the other chamber, it has to come back. The prodigal bill comes home. So then the House is going to have to make a decision. Can they live with the Senate, the way the Senate changed the bill? If they can live with it, they vote on the floor, and then the bill just goes to the governor. And then he can take up his portion of it. most likely the House and the Senate are going to have different perspectives because the House version of the last House version and the last Senate version are kind of different in this case. And so if that's the case, they can create a conference committee, and it'll be comprised of members of the subject committees in both chairs of both chambers. And it will have various other people sitting in these conferences. You do not testify at conference because you've already had all of these opportunities to educate the legislators. And this is their time to work out a compromise between themselves. In theory, they cannot add any new material at conference. In fact, they do. It's because they don't consult me. So, they create a new version of this bill. Conference Draft 1. Bicycles are mandatory if you're 18, you ride in the same direction of traffic, $1 a year in the highway fund, you gotta wear a helmet. So some from the House and some from the Senate. The people who will never be sitting on a conference committee are legislators who voted no anywhere along the way. Because they've already said they don't like this bill. So that's why you will see so many I with reservations votes. That's kind of legislative speak for no, but it might get you on a conference committee. The reality of conference, you'll probably have 2 or 3 co-chairs in the House, 2 or 3 co-chairs in the Senate, and some mere legislators as well. The chairs are the people with the power. So if a bill gets to conference and you're concerned about something, talk to the chairs, call them up. So, rancorous partisan debate. So both chambers now are going to have to decide if they can live with this version of the bill. And this is when you get those philosophies of governance discussions. It's like, oh, that's heated, you know. But think about why people are so invigorated about it, and it's because they care. Whether you agree with them or not, they care. So now the conference draft version goes to the governor. And he has these choices. He can sign the bill, he can veto it, he can allow it to become law without his signature. And you can also lobby the governor's office when bills get to him. So, if he vetoes the bill, the legislature has another go at it. They can decide if they want to come back into session to try to override. Has to be 2/3 votes of both the House and the Senate in order to override a veto. First governor in the state to have a veto overridden was Democratic Governor Cayetano with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. And they still overrid it. So our good idea turned into a good law. The fish took flight because of your involvement in the process. We could not ever get to this place without you. And this is what we got. Betty's on the road. She got her buck. She's looking good. She got her helmet. She's on the road. All our traffic problems are solved. Celebrate. Yes.
How would it actually become law without the governor?
He has a certain number of days to just, if he cares enough that he dislikes the bill, he's going to veto it. But if he thinks the veto might be overridden, for instance, he can, I can live with, I don't like it. It'll still pass into law.
Okay.
He just doesn't sign it. No. Doesn't change the outcome.
Does it expedite if he signs it, or what?
No, not really. It's a thing. Yes.
It seems to me that the Ways and Means Committee probably is the most important of the committees. So why are they not public? The hearing is not public because it has to do with finance.
They're public hearings. They're not the kind, and it's not necessarily just Ways and Means. It's on the Senate side, only a public hearing is required. But they will meet in public for decision making. And I can't say really it's the most important committee. It's the Senate's Money Committee, and so it's crucial. But the House Finance Committee has the same amount of power.
And also, can a single individual, either in the legislature or the Senate, stop a bill through filibuster, or do we have it? We don't.
No, nor do we have referendum the way like California has. initiative in California.
Right.
One of the things I've watched in California for years, California has initiative and people get stuff on the ballot and it's like, I would like to see the state do blah, 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 blah. Fine, so they pass this law through public initiative, but nobody wants to fund it. And so there are advantages and drawbacks to those systems.
Also,
too.
you mentioned a three-legged chair that has excellent balance. As in reality, the executive branch, which to me it seems like it's the least important. Probably judiciary that realizes the constitutionality of the laws probably should come first, and then legislature, and then the executive. But the executive.
You go get that changed.
No, but the
Yeah,
executive has
it's-
more power in reality, right?
Well, they have equal power because the governor is the one that, the departments, all of the departments, public safety, transportation, human services, all of those are part of the executive branch. And so they're the ones that are carrying out the laws that the legislature passed, and that's very powerful.
Right.
Yes.
You said in the beginning, the legislature has the power to change the state constitution.
No, they have the power to introduce
Yeah.
legislation that will come out on a ballot, and then you and I vote.
What about the Hawaii revised statutes?
That is the laws of the state.
So if you have a law there that makes something illegal, and can it be legalized by an administrative rule?
No, if it's against the law, you can't write a rule that will get around it.
Okay, well, the DLNR has been doing that for 30 years.
Okay, I can't get into those specifics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
if your bill passes, then you go ahead and celebrate. Make sure that you call up. You will not have done it alone. There will be a lot of people at the Capitol that will have helped you. Committee clerks, office managers. Get to know the staff if you got a choice of getting to know the legislators when you call up, or getting to know the staff. Get to know the staff. They're actually the ones that know where the files are, and they're the ones that they will pass on your messages to the legislators. But staff is very important. Most likely, this is what's going to happen to your beautiful bill. You're going to solve the whole state's problems, but it didn't happen. So what are your options? You got a couple options. One is maybe there's another bill out there that's still alive called Relating to Transportation. It's doing something else. So go testify on the other bill. Write in your testimony, send it in saying, you got a great bill here. You sure could improve it though if you included this information about the bicycles, and get them to change that one. So you can do that. And the other thing is, ideas never die. Bills die. Ideas do not. So keep your idea alive. And if your bill dies, then the next session is coming, and the next one, and the next one. Persist. Persistence is the name of the game. Don't give up. Next session's coming around. Now the reality is we have a 2-year legislative cycle. The first year after an election is the beginning of that 2-year cycle. And you're talking about comas? The bills that die in the first session, if a bill is not passed into law or vetoed, it didn't really die, it just looks dead, it's a Lazarus bill. It's in a coma.
Would be resurrected.
It can be resurrected the following session, and it does not have to start all over. If it made it through 4 committees of 6, then at that 5th committee is where it could come back to life. So say your bill
All
dies
the
this
members
year.
have changed.
No, not
No,
in
we're
2-year
talking about the
cycle.
second.
Right. So if your bill died in that first session, and the next session comes along, pick up the phone and call the chair of the committee where your bill is sitting and say, please put this on an agenda. It's an important piece of legislation, and the citizens deserve the chance to testify.
Does it make a difference if it's an odd or even year?
They're all odd years at the Capitol. Odd-numbered years are the ones that begin the 2-year cycle right after an election. So 2013, 2014 will actually be one legislative cycle.
Yeah, so you'll get basically 2 years to get your bill.
Yeah. But there's
Good evening, patients. We will be closing in 30 minutes.
Okay,
If you need assistance in finding library materials, please
there was
see
a
staff.
Republican legislator, she just retired, Barbara Maramoto, and she's been in the legislature along with Calvin Say longer than any other legislators, and she just did not run this last time. Wonderful woman, and she was, and it's hard for Republicans. as the initial sponsor of the bill to get legislation passed because we have so few Republicans in the legislature. But she persisted. It took her 14 years to get a bill passed, and she did it. So bear that in mind. Persistence is what really makes it all survive. So here you go. The 2-year cycle begins all over again. And we can help you. You know, it's really confusing, and I'm tossing lots of material at you, but call us. You know, we'll do our best to help. The legislature's website, capital.hawaii.gov, capital with an O, not an A, capital, no money.
No money.
Yes.
You said something about initiatives, that succeed, but then nobody wants to fund them.
In California, or, yeah. No, we don't have initiative here. Yeah.
So, what happens, they just die?
Well, we don't have that process in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right.
So they just kind of die after all that effort.
Well, there is no initiative process in the state, so, yeah. So, the legislature's website, and we're going to take a kind of a really quick tour through this, and I'll just mention that there's an organization, it's a hui of all of the state legislatures, called National Conference of State Legislatures, and they just determined the Hawaii legislative website to be the best in the nation. They've just completely revamped it. Last year was the first year, and there's an astounding amount of material here. So on the website, down at the bottom in the middle is where you're always going to find out what's currently scheduled for a hearing. And if it's not scheduled for a hearing, you can't testify on it. You can call legislators and send them emails and stuff, but you can't testify formally yet. Always click on the See It button to go into the hearing notice. And the bottom of the hearing notice is where the instructions for submitting your testimony will be. On this website, up in this corner, this is the search functions. You need a bill number to track your piece of legislation. So House Bill 123, that's what you're going to put in there. You stick that in there, hit your go button, and you're going to get a bill status sheet. Every piece of legislation has a status page. It's like a history of everything that's happened. They're incredibly dense with material and will give you lots of information. If you don't know the bill number, which you gotta have, use the keyword search, bicycle, transportation, that sort of thing. Make it as specific as you can. Use the word near, bicycle, near, highway. The word near will pull up anything where those words are in proximity to one another in the same piece of legislation. If you don't know when hearings are going to take, you want to know things by date, use that. These three buttons in particular are going to be very powerful resources for you. You go in and register your email address and your personal password, and you're going to be able to create your own page within the legislature's website where you can do a massive amount of things. So say you want to go into here, sign in after you've created your password. These three buttons are going to turn orange, and they'll stay that way for about 15 minutes if you don't use it, and then it'll shut you out again, so you sign in again. But once you have those orange, you can go into hearing notices, and you can choose the committees whose notices you would like to get, and I'll just send you an email saying this is going on. You can also do it with bills. House Bill 123, enter. Senate Bill 456, enter. However many bills you want. And whatever you choose, every time something happens to that piece of legislation, you will get an email. It's infinitely easier than it was, say, 10 years ago. When I used to go to work at 5 in the morning and wait for the phone to ring, and people in Washington, D.C., it's like, I got to check the status of 75 bills. So, early on, a lot of eager people will say, I signed up for all of the committees because I want to know what's going on at the Capitol. Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. My assistant and I look at every hearing notice. It's hideous. Measure tracking is one of the greatest resources you could ever have on a legislature's website. This is where you and your group, whoever you are, can actually manipulate data and really get your job done. So create your list. This was my assistant's list a couple years ago, and she was doing work on, she was tracking task force legislation and things that related to the public access room and all sorts of things. So using the example of her task force, she just entered all of the bills that dealt with task forces. And so she could track those pieces of legislation. Up in the upper corner, here's where the real magic is. You can export that whole list into an Excel spreadsheet. You can manipulate the data, add your notes. You can send, you people take these 7 and you take these 7 and you take these 10, and you are the ones that are going to be testifying on those. So a lot of power you have in there. This is a bill status page. Every bill, every resolution has one. You can submit your testimony. Say you read through this, you want to submit your testimony, you can do it directly from the status page. The most current version of the bill is always going to be in big fat letters up at the top. Click on that to read the text. If you want to see the text as the legislators are looking at it, click on the PDF version, because that'll give you the line numbered pages. Say you're watching a hearing, you finally get your thing working out. And so the legislators are in the hearing, they're saying, page 3, line 7, I have some concerns about that. And so if you do it that way, then you can go directly to what they're talking about. The measure title will not change if it's a bill. This description is always going to be reflective of this version of the bill. But as you can see in this example, there are many other versions of the bill. And so you can go in, open those up, and inexplicably they put the short little descriptions at the end of the bill. I don't know why. And so you can go in and get kind of like a Cliff Notes version of what's going on with this. So here we go. This version reflects that. These are the current referrals. This is a Senate bill that was in the House when we captured this. So these are all the House committees that measure would have been referred to.
Excuse me, doesn't it go on, as I understand the process, systematically? So why should there be so many different versions? It goes one step at a time, doesn't it?
Because every time a committee gets hold of it, they probably are going to change it.
So they've changed it. So the previous one are rescinded in a way.
It sits by the wayside, yeah. It's just there. And you can, if you like an earlier version of the bill, you can write your testimony to say, I really like the Senate Draft 1 version better than the one you're considering now, so please change the bill to go back to the earlier version. So you can do
So
that.
all the versions are available until it's finalized.
They're all available, but only the most current is the one
Exactly,
under
yeah.
consideration. But you can see these are all, you can go in here and read every one of them. Everything that will have happened to this piece of legislation is going to be listed in sequence here. You can sort by date to have the most current version first instead of last. But this is going to tell you who voted how in the various committees so that you can call them up and scold them if you didn't think they voted right. Or you can give them like pats on the head for doing the thing you wanted them to do. It's a little closer version of it. And this is where you will see people how they voted, where you're not going to see many no votes because they might want to sit on that conference committee. We've already talked about this. In between the various bills, various versions of the bill, you'll see all these committee reports because a committee has to generate a report to send to the next committee. And those committee reports can be rich with information. And they're going to say, this is what the purpose of this bill was. These are some of the people that testified on it. This is the decision we made, and here's why we made it. They can be really useful documents. All testimony is posted. You'll see it's right down here. So if you want to see what other people have said about a piece of legislation, you can go in here. If a couple of days late, still send your testimony in, because this can be a really important document later on. Say your bill dies, and somebody might need to make reference to your testimony when they recreate another version of the bill.
What happens if they withdraw your testimony? I mean, I've done things before and
I can't hear you.
I said, I've done testimony before and it doesn't show up on that.
If that's just an error, and so you would call the committee clerk, the chair of that committee, ask to speak to the clerk and say, my testimony has not appeared, please check on it.
Don't you have just like a 24-hour or 48-hour window too? And then sometimes they do this on a Friday, and then on Monday, you gotta have your testimony there, and there's all kind of trickery that seems to happen.
Well, it's the trickery of a 4-month calendar. Yeah, so, yeah, you're right, it's a very short time period. This reports and list page is where you're going to find all sorts of things. What did the governor veto? Which House bills got Senate votes, which did not? This list is about to change. They're going to reorient it and give you more information on that. We're going to run short on time. Back here, if you were wanting to click on, there's a link down here, bills passed first crossover. Again, this is what that list would look like. And again, you'll be able to export, you can export that into Excel and manipulate that data as well. So you want to know what Senate rules are, House rules are, you want to go back and see what happened in prior years. Everything is online back to 1999. Prior to that, you would want to contact the Legislative Reference Bureau, but the information is available through 1999. There you go. So this is an example. If you click on the Senate link there, you want to see the daily floor actions. You want to read the Senate rules. That's where you would go. Archives, there has been an innovation last year. You can now search all years at the same time. I know there was a piece of legislation sometime in the past that did such and so, and you can search using this wonderful feature. It takes a while to go through about 13 years of legislation, but if you know a specific year, click on that, and then you can find what you're looking for that specific year. I'm kind of hastening through because we're going to start kicking this out here. Under links at the bottom right of the page, all sorts of things. These take you off of the legislature site and into different ones. You can get to our website there, and there you will find a video version of last year's presentation I did for Hawaii Council Services. There's also this entire PowerPoint is there, a PDF version of it is there, all of our newsletters from various sessions.
You know, I'm following all the process and all that kind of stuff. I hope before you close, you can say something about lobbying. I think that's part of the process too to get this.
Lobbying is people just talking to legislators. I'm not, you know, there are paid lobbyists and there are citizen lobbyists and there are every action that we do to try to persuade somebody else is lobbying.
Important part of the whole legislative process, isn't it? And that's what gets the bill passed many times.
It does. It's,
and you can know the best thing about all the process, but I'm trying to get at, you know, how effective lobbying can be.
How effective lobbying can be.
Can be.
Well, you know,
I know with the power, like you say, the people, you know, but people oftentimes sit on a butt, yep. But most times people sit on their butts and don't do nothing, so
but not you.
I hope not.
Yeah. So yeah, there are paid lobbyists. I mean, there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
There are people who are paid to do that. And they can be very influential people. But so can...
The library will be closing in 15 minutes. It is now too late to borrow movies.
Cut it off now? 5 minutes? Okay, lots of questions.
Round trip to your office, how much will it cost from Hilo?
Pick up the phone, it's free.
I don't want to, I want to come visit your office.
Oh,
see over there. Yeah.
However much it costs, that's how much it's going to cost. So they're telling me I got to stop. So the Hawaii Revised Statutes in the bottom left corner, if you want to know what current law is, that's where you will go. Let me come over to here, browse the sections. If you know a chapter number and a section number, use that. This will take you into the legislature's directories. There are only 14 volumes of them, so if you want, say, 291C-146, 291 is going to be in volume 5. Click on that. One directory deeper, you click on the hyperlink to 291C, and then you go into the individual section where you discover that it is actually against the law to ride a bicycle without having your hands on the handlebars. From 1971, it's been illegal. In the legislature, 1971, Act 150, part of Section 1, created this law. It was amended in 1984 by Act 273, Section 13.
Carriage, baggage, bundle, all of those are being violated every day.
Well, I can't help you with that.
I know.
Okay. So it is a lot of information. You're going to make me stop now. And then how do you add your voice to the mix? You can find all of this at the Public Access Room's website. It's hawaii.gov. Look on your flyer. It's hawaii.gov/LRB. We're part of the Legislative Reference Bureau, LRB/PAR. If you go in there into workshops, you can find this entire presentation online. So I'm sorry we have to go. But thank you. Let me just give you one real quick thing here.
So in the next session, would you please start the session at 5 rather than 5:30?
I would be happy to. Okay. Let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, let me just show you this one slide so that you...
Oh, by the way, you still have 10, 15 minutes.
Well, they need to shut down though, so... So, I'll just mention, there is no known cure for the political virus. Once you get it, you got it. It's yours. You live with it. So, the thing that you can do to keep it from killing you is to be active participants in your own governance for the benefit of us all. So, call us, come see us. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You guys had the best questions. And next year, I will start at 5. Usually, there's a little more latitude.